So let's get a few minutes with Kemi Akide from Meristem Securities. Good morning, Kemi. It's good to have you on the program.
Good morning. Thank you, Boston.
Okay, it's good to have you. So take us through these new indices, as it were, hitting the ground running. Why are these indices very important, and what does it do if I'm investing in the Nigerian market?
Okay, Meristem is very excited to launch the NSE-Meristem style indices because we see it as part of our contribution to the deepening of the capital market by bridging certain gaps that we've seen over the years. We actually feel very honored to hear the innovation call to bring in a little more diversity in investing in Nigeria. All right, the indices is actually meant to, it's a kind of a philosophy that underpins how people invest in the capital market. All right. Investors invest because they want to make money, but they have different philosophies that underpin their investment. So some will tell you that they just have to value stocks. You want to pick stocks that are cheap. Cheap, of course, is relative. So maybe relative to the earnings, dividend, the book value, or even in historical context. Some others will tell you they're not bothered about the price, whether or not it's cheap. All they're concerned about is growth, the growth they see on the horizon. Maybe due to some expansion plans or some products, new product portfolio the company is bringing on board. But of course, they also need to consider the historical context, because you can't just bet on the future. So we're trying to make this thing easy, or even easier, more comfortable and enjoyable for investors, and that's why we launched the indices. All right. So what we did is to identify certain factors that actually define those philosophies investors have. So along the value space, we have 5 factors. Along the growth space, we have 5 factors. Now, I need to also mention something. Up until now, fund managers who maybe follow the value or the growth investing styles, they typically benchmark themselves against the NSE or the NSE 30. However, in the investment management world, these benchmarks or these indices are not appropriate benchmarks to evaluate the performance of these fund managers because they don't share the same philosophy. They don't have the same investment strategy as this fund managers. So they are not very appropriate, and that is a gap that the NSE-Meristem style indices has come to bridge. It's also good news to the academic community because you typically find studies that tell you, oh, over a certain phase of the business cycle, for instance, growth outperforms, then maybe over this other phase, value outperforms. However, you can't test this hypothesis in Nigeria because we don't have indices you can use to track either growth or the value investing. In addition, for investors, it also helps them in selecting managers, in appraising managers. So you tell me, yes, I outperformed the NSE, but that's not your strategy. Now you tell me you're following a growth strategy. Did you outperform this particular index? Yes or no? Now, in addition, it also helps managers to be more disciplined. And how do I mean? You're trying to outperform a particular index, but you're also mindful of the level of volatility you're actually taking up. You're mindful of how frequently you're rebalancing the portfolio. So it's not just about outperforming, but it's also about the discipline to manage risk on the other side. So we think it's a very major thing. It's a positive thing for the market, and we're very confident of the enormous potential it has to revolutionize the act of investing in Nigeria. Yeah. Now, I must say something also.
Kemi, there's quite a lot involved. Kemi, just a quick one. We need to manage the next 1.5 minutes of this conversation. So, in terms of putting our indices together, there's a lot that goes into it. Okay. So, give us what goes into this index and how you arrived at what the value line would be moving forward.
Okay, thank you. The index is a very robust one, and it's a multi-factor one. For each stock, we consider 10 factors. Now, for most other indices, they are kind of mutually exclusive. So it can be in banking and be in consumer goods. It can be a mid-cap stock and also be a large-cap stock. However, for this index, it's like the personality of a person. You can be an introvert, but have some features of an extrovert individual. You can be an extrovert and have the feature of an introvert, but it's about what is very dominant. So for the style indices, we first screen by liquidity, and then for every stock, we screen them based on 10 factors, 5 for growth and 5 for value. It then depends on the dominant one. We use our proprietary technology to create defined maximum and maximum bands for the two, because it's a spectrum, it's a space. Now, once it's above a certain threshold, it's assigned to the growth. Once it's below a certain threshold, it's assigned to value. Now, for those that have the blend of the two, we call them core. All right, so for the value, we consider how cheap a stock is in terms of its earnings, its dividend, in terms of the book value, and also in terms of the historical multiple it's used to trade at, and also finally in terms of how we think it's going to trade towards the end of the year. For the growth, we considered 5 factors as well: the historical earnings growth, the historical revenue growth, and the number of consecutive earnings, consecutive period of earnings growth, because we also don't want so much volatility. So it could have grown in 10 quarters, but what if it's alternating? We really don't want that kind of a thing. We want some level of stability in the index. So we screen each stock based on those 10 criteria, and depending on where it tilts, we assign it to either the growth or the value index.
Kemi Akinde, thank you very much, Head of Investment Research at... thank you. Kemi Akinde, thank you very much from Meristem Securities. We'll continue this conversation some other time. Everyone who wants to track that, you can track that since yesterday when the stock exchange actually flagged that, or the NSE-Meristem growth and value indices. Let's come back to you after the break.